Welcome everyone to the first episode of our podcast, Quiet Conversations. I'm Danilo Queiros, the founder of Quiet Life Co. And today I'm thrilled to introduce you to our host, Zethu.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm dehydrated, tired, sunburned, but I'm happy.
Sounds like a Monday morning to me.
I even forgot it was Monday.
Yeah, well, they're normally your day off, aren't they?
Yes, I don't work on Mondays. It's a life policy.
Well, you're about to start, so welcome. Yeah. So anyway, in the coming weeks, we'll be releasing a series of episodes that we've recorded together over the past 2 months. Well, not together. You've hosted them. I've been behind the scenes.
You were in the background, moral support.
Building stages.
Nods of approval.
Exactly. Those episodes have featured people who we consider to be pushing the limits of creativity in South Africa, and really through Quiet Conversations and the conversations we've had together about what we hope to achieve here, the goal is to dive deep into their minds of creatives, of industry leaders and visionaries in the field. Because the media landscape in South Africa sort of likes to speak gossip.
Yeah, it's terrible.
There's very little conversation about art and process and intention behind the art. And that's something we both care about very deeply. And I'm so stoked to have you along on this journey with our company and trying to create a space for those conversations. And so just to give new audience listeners, because this will be our first ever episode.
Yes, welcome to episode 1.
This is Quiet Conversations with Zethu Gqola.
So, Quiet Conversations, let's chat a bit about what it's all about. What we're trying to do here is explore the quieter, often overlooked parts of creative people and their journeys, touching on their motivations, challenges, and dreams, while providing a space for meaningful dialogue. And today I have the incredible opportunity of doing just that with you, our incredible host, and to dive into your ever-evolving story, because it is one that's always evolving. And, I've had the privilege over the last 5 years getting to know you, becoming friends with you, but I hope I can call us that.
Yes,
because
we're friends.
We are now.
I also just want to put a disclaimer. This interview was Danilo's idea. I wouldn't be some arrogant motherfucker like, oh no, let's interview me.
Yeah, but I think
first episode. But it was a good idea. It's a good idea.
I think you are worth interviewing, Zethu. I think your story is incredible, and I think as much as we care about the conversations of the creatives who are audience facing, I think there's so much to be said about the people behind the scenes, because the infrastructure behind creativity is also lacking in South Africa.
Yeah.
And what we would really like to do is encourage people who think they might be good at, providing infrastructure for creativity and providing platforms through which artists can develop to sort of find their feet in the industry and find routes through which they can achieve the things that you've achieved, and maybe other things too. But I think every story brings with it learnings that are so important to share.
Even for musicians, like music has become the new cash grab. It's like strippers with a mic, if I can put it that way, because everyone can see it as their way out of whatever situation. Everyone thinks I'll make one song and I'll be famous. And I think it's so important to understand the creative depth that real artists get into to achieve certain songs, certain sounds, their collaborators, the stresses.
100%. And I think so much of it is about connecting with an audience, and connection very often comes from being real. I think you can have these blow-away moments which are like, it's the right sound at the right time and you just get lucky. But a lot of the most interesting artists we've worked with together, and we'll get into all of that later, have really been people who take their craft seriously. They consider what they're doing. They think about the things and they treat it like one. But I would just say the reason I said I hope I can call you my friend is not because I don't think we're friends. It's just because when we worked together, Zethu had a very clear rule, which was she doesn't make friends with colleagues. She keeps professionalism professional.
And that rule stands ground. There have been 2 exceptions over the last few years, but I honestly don't believe you should become friends with your colleagues.
But before we dive into the conversation, I also want to introduce you and your story, because people know you as that girl from TikTok sometimes,
It drives me crazy.
Yes.
Oh, all these years years working my ass off to be that girl from TikTok, which I can't be mad about, to be honest, because where else would you know me from?
Well, I think you've done so much, but so much of that has been behind the scenes. And I think, both this podcast and TikTok shows a side of you that is more public facing. And today we're going to try to get into that, but we're also going to get into the side of you that people might not know about necessarily. Yeah. And, you've worked for Glamour, you've worked for Rocky the Daisies, and you work for Apple via Platoon at the moment, an artist services company. You've been at the heart of some of the most impactful music campaigns in South Africa and across Africa. And in your spare time, you have built a whole career now as a cultural commentator on TikTok.
Which is crazy.
Which is absolutely crazy.
And I'm grateful for the TikTok followers, because if it wasn't for y'all, I wouldn't be sitting here on a random Monday.
No. And I think what will be interesting for me is sort of speaking about those parallels, because there's so much really that you've done. And I think one of the reasons we get on so well is that we can't do one thing at a time.
It's not possible.
It's absolutely not possible.
I need to be doing 50 things and failing at least at like 20 of them in order to feel like my life is on track. Like I can't just have one thing. I go into a personal crisis. I spiral. I can't even be creative if I have to focus on one thing. I need the house to be burning from multiple angles and rooms.
I get you. I get bored. Do you get bored? Or not? Is it a boredom?
It is kind of a boredom, but it feels like I'm lacking achievement. And not achievement in the sense of achieving something that can be celebrated. It just is unnatural. And I've also learned over time it's actually also a toxic trait to be that way.
To be the way we are.
Yeah, it stems from some deep down place where you're never doing enough. I mean, I'm not talking bad on our parents for not making us feel like we're doing enough, but I think it feels like you can always do more, because there have been times in your life that you've challenged yourself to do more and you've been doing a lot, and that a lot was exceptional. I
agree it's from a toxic place, but it's also the thing that lights a fire under us. And
yes.
It's this thing in your life that you have to somehow learn to balance, because on the one hand, you don't want to be busy all the time, that your life is just so full that you never have time to actually explore things because you've just packed it full with all these commitments. But on the other hand...
I love how I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm looking at my life and I'm like, you are not doing that.
Yes,
but it comes and goes.
It's easy to speak about balance. To achieve it is a whole nother thing. And I definitely have not achieved it. But, I think finding that balance is part of our eternal struggle, right? Because it's like, there's a part of us that needs to be doing a lot, that needs to be achieving a lot, that needs to be changing the way things are, and changing the status quo. And there's a part of us that also needs to relax and chill out on the weekend, right? And I sort of have like a hard rule where my weekends are just like, we did a massive event on Saturday, I worked the whole day, but other than that, it's normally like no work.
3.5 years ago, I couldn't tell when work started and ended.
Was this
and
lockdown?
Because I didn't, it was pre-lockdown. Lockdown changed everything for me. But I blurred the lines personally between what is work time and what is personal time, to the point where I became accessible to everyone and no one at the same time. Like if you needed me for work on Sunday at 10 p.m., I would still be your girl. And 3 years ago, I was like, after work is after work. Like I said, a hard stop on 6 p.m. If you try to contact me over the weekend, you're not even going to hear from me. And if you're still persistent, I'm going to make this someone else's problem. Like I'll hand you over to someone else. Like I will not help you.
Yeah.
I will not solve your problem. And it took so many years of unlearning, trying to be everything for everyone in the career sense, where I was like, wait a minute, I'm Zethu fucking Gqola. Like I can still get this done if I stop for 2 days. I can still get this done if I don't reply to someone. If someone doesn't like me, that shouldn't be my problem.
Yeah. I think likability is something that a lot of us struggle with. Is like, and I think I've probably got the opposite problem where I care too little about whether people like me or not, and I'm more
you couldn't give a shit, Danilo. Just say hello.
But
no, it's a personality trait and an attribute about you that I absolutely love. And I feel like I've started to lean into that this year. I can say that this year is probably the first year in my entire life where I could not care what you think to a degree, like maybe 85%.
There's always, I do care what people think.
Yeah.
I just don't care enough to let it stop me from living my life. I think that's sort of
it stopped me from living my life for a long time. And it's also hard because we work with creatives and musicians. Being liked is actually a really important part of our job, because if someone doesn't like you, they don't have to come back and work with me and pay me.
And you're in marketing.
And I'm in marketing.
Which is the whole thing, is trying to make people like you, right?
Exactly.
Or not you, but the
My
clients
ideas,
you work for. Yes, and your ideas. And it's about making things likable, approachable.
But also, just like an artist, at some point you have to separate yourself from the art. Yeah. There were so many times where I'd come up with an incredible strategy. I've always wanted to work with this artist. I've listened to their music since I was a little girl. And then I present the strategy and then they just don't like it. Or they're like, do you have any other ideas?
Yeah.
And I don't have any. And I would link my brain capabilities and my creativity with my identity, and to separate myself from my art took so long. And it's still an ongoing issue, but
100%. And I felt that a lot, and I think I learned that very quickly at our time together. I'd love to get into this later a little bit, because there is this element of like instant gratitude, instant response that we live in. And I want to touch on that later, but I want to actually go back to a long time ago.
Yes.
So to when you were a little girl, like you were just mentioning, and you were raised in small towns. You were born in Mount Fletcher and raised...
Do you even know where that is?
It's near Lesotho. I looked it up on the map before I started this. And then raised in Matatiele.
Yes.
Did I say it right?
Yes, no. Matatiele. I moved there when I was 6 years old.
Okay. Both small towns, rural towns, or?
Mount Fletcher is more of a rural town. Matatiele is an official, category small town. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was in boarding school from the age of 7 turning 8 all the way until now, I suppose.
So bordering.
I left home when I was 7 years old with nothing but the books on my back. And I was going to school. And then I went to Rhodes. And then I dropped out of Rhodes. I was studying law and journalism. And then one lecture, journalism second year, the lecture was just going on. And I was like, I feel like she's teaching me everything I know. It just felt like every single class had been things that I know. Don't ask me how I knew all these things. But it just felt like, it felt like what do they call that? The deja vu. But except I don't know, shifted universes or dimensions. And essentially, I felt like I'm learning everything that I know. Let me just leave and go do it.
And, so many stories.
Not the law part. I could never just leave school. I am now your legal
representative. You need the degree
in
the bar.
Yeah.
Although you can represent yourself in court if you want to.
I mean, with my legal theory 101 and 102, I'll probably get past opening statements.
There we go. But anyway, going back into that, dropping out of university, because we sort of live in a society now where you're told you have to go to university for success. But more and more as we're moving forward now, and more people have degrees, and what do you do with your degree in some random thing that doesn't actually bring that much value to a company? And a lot of people are finding this, that they studied and now they have student debt and all these things.
I mean, there's so many fields where education is an important thing. I came from a family where I was the second ever in the history of our family to be able to go to university, let alone somewhere prestigious like Rhodes University. I was the first in my immediate family to go to an official high-ranking university. And to quit university didn't come lightly to me. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We were barely touching the surface of middle class, and to quit varsity was one of the scariest things in my life. But I knew for a fact that A, I'm not going to make it. B, I know for a fact now, even though I originally came here to study law, and then I added journalism as an extra random credit, I gravitated towards that random credit. My family back home was so excited. We're going to have our first lawyer in the family. It was a whole hoo-ha. A gap year was not an option. I begged my parents, please, I'll go work the tools at ShopRite, something, just like, let me breathe. And my parents were just like, you got good marks, you're on a roll. I got like a partial scholarship at Rhodes. Like, there was just this pressure to just go, go, go. So to drop out of school was one of the most terrifying things ever. I knew I couldn't ask for permission for that. It's an instant no. So I took myself to the registrar's office. I deregistered. Once you deregister, that shit cannot be undone. I went home. I was so stressed in my apartment. I think I had like chronic diarrhea. I know I'm oversharing, but like my entire body was so overwhelmed. Like, you stupid bitch, what have you done? And I stuck it out. And by the way, I quit like during exams. So it's not like I was underprepared for exams at all. Like, I was still going to my exams, and like 3 exams deep, I was just like, why am I wasting everybody's time? In hindsight, I should have probably just finished that year, gotten those exams, and then deregistered after. But it was just so overwhelming being at school. It's like it was a combination of all these years of being away from home, of being alone, of always having to make decisions on my own. I'd lived far away from my parents or siblings. I didn't really have a deep relationship with any of them, besides like, obviously you love each other, you care about each other, you check on each other every day or every other day. But it just was too much. I just knew I had to get out of there. I also had like a list longer than my life of terrible habits. And I was feeling like I'm either going to spiral out of control and die here, or I can just save myself, go home and do this thing that I feel is highly possible. I deregister. I go home. I tell my parents what happened. First, I lie. And I'm like, oh, exams, they were hard. And then I tell them the truth like 2 weeks later. And then I tell them I can't go back. And my dad just like wasn't talking to me. And I fell into a deep depression because what I thought I could just instantly do if I just quit school wasn't happening for like a few months. And then I started a blog, and then that blog took off. And I used to interview like anyone from presenters to musical artists. It was also the dawn of Twitter, when all celebrities came on Twitter. Back then, people didn't really have a social media manager for them. I could just like DM a big rapper and they'd DM me back. And then next thing, I have their email address and we have a little exchange. So from there, that blog blows up. And on Twitter, same platform where I started my little journalism, I see an ad to become an intern at Marie Claire. And that's how I ended up moving to Cape Town, interned at Marie Claire. And then from there, it was just like Marie Claire, then GQ, then Glamour. Then I was like, fuck journalism. Then I moved into the music industry, and yeah, sorry, I even forgot what you were talking about. But
no,
I thought
it was exactly.
I would just highlight, people quit varsity for different reasons, but they can also be a culmination of everything being too much. And I am studying now, funny enough. Very few people know. I'm studying through NYU and the Clive Davis Institute of Music. It is beating my ass right now. But I think the best thing about online learning is that you can just be like, this is too much right now. And you close your laptop for like a week or two. And then you come back before that module's deadline.
I almost, and this is probably veering off topic from what this show's actually about, but I almost feel like going to university straight after school is the wrong way.
It's the worst thing.
I wish I had studied at 22, 23, because I would have had time to figure out what I wanted to know. And then gone and studied it. It's
exactly what me and my kid's dad always says. Like, it is ridiculous to expect someone
at 17,
18 to suddenly make this decision about their lives, when I only figured out what I wanted to do with my life when I was 25. Up until I was 25, I was dilly-dallying. Even when I finally achieved my little journalism dream, once I got there, I was like, this isn't actually what I want to do. Like, I don't know what to do now.
Well, it's so funny because my experience of university was quite different. So from the age of like 13, I picked up a bass guitar. And for me, it was like music. I fell in love with music, and I knew I wanted to be in music. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a rock star. I never lived that life. A little bit, got a little taste of it, but never the full, that's not my career now. But I didn't study music because my parents were like, that's not a real degree. You're not going to get a job if you're a musician. And I was good at maths and science. And my parents were like, you're going to underutilize your brain and your being, playing in a band for the rest of your life. And in hindsight, I think they were right. I think my brain would have been a little bit confined, being in like such a serving job. Not that it's self-serving, you know, art is obviously for other people, but like you're sort of thinking about your own trajectory.
Yeah.
Whereas
because things could just not work out. And our parents come with the best intentions because life could literally not work out. There have been times when life for me didn't work out. And I was like, oh shit, if I that degree would have been handy right about now.
So I finished a robotics engineering degree, mechatronics is what it's called at UCT. Yeah. And
that sounds like you built robots.
I built one robot. It had to follow a line and then find a chain and then play tug of war against another robot.
Really? Yeah. For real?
Not joking. I built that in my fourth year. It took me 5 years to finish. It should have taken me 4, but also halfway through I'd been doing work experience. I was in this office in Stellenbosch working at an engineering firm, and it was
you went to Stellenbosch?
No, don't worry about that part. So then
You really don't give that vibe.
No, I went to UCT for university, sorry. I went to an internship in Stellenbosch for work experience at an office there. And it was like 50, 60-year-old white dudes, full office, just white men, like sitting around their computers.
Sounds like Stellenbosch.
drawing out where air conditioners need to go for an office space. And I'm like, why did I learn all that maths and science to be in this
to
work
be an architect of air conditioner placements? Well,
not even. Like, it's like playing The Sims, but like you just got to be like, okay, there needs to be one air conditioning unit every 50 meters. I'm going to draw them out, draw the pipes. Okay, cool, and I'll get paid. It's like that. I was like, nah, this is not what I want to do. Like, my ambition of engineering was like, I'm going to design a new car that's going to like change cars, you know. I lost a lot of that ambition through the years. They tell you it's a creative industry, but it's really not in South Africa. It can be, but I think it's very difficult.
But I think you need one of those work experiences, because after I quit journalism, it's not like I had anything lined up. Luckily, when I made the jump from Marie Claire to Glamour, the window period was like, it was just like 3 months of hunger before I found my next gig. But when I gave up working at Glamour, I was waitressing during the nighttime. I was also a little shopkeeper. There used to be this shop opposite Spa on Kloof Street, and it was like one of those little boutiques, you know, like Instagram baddie clothes, except like once everyone started buying off of Shein and like your Alibabas, that thing closed down because people were just like, oh, you're getting this shit from Shein.
Was it?
I don't want to name. Okay. I will never. I
know which one.
I will never give her the satisfaction. I applied for leave, and originally she said.
Bali. Like they used to import stuff from the East.
Yeah, she was just getting the stuff from China. I was there early every Monday helping her stuff. On Mondays, I remember we used to cut off these random other labels, and then her mom would be at the back like sewing her brand name onto these clothes. And I was just like, oh my God. So I applied for leave. I know I'm digressing here, but I just had a flashback and I'm just like, So I applied to go on leave while I was this little shopkeeper, and she originally said I could go on leave, and we were going to drive from Cape Town all the way to Grahamstown for one of my friend's graduations. And she approved the leave, but the day before I'm supposed to leave, she's like, actually, I'm going to need you to come in. And I was like, no, I'm on the road. Like, I'm out of here. She's like, can't you come back? And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't have any money. No money, no dream. I'm just in this car full of booze, friends, food, and we're going in one direction. She fired me. She said, well, don't bother coming back.
Sure,
and she had my taser.
You could have gone to CCMA for that.
And I know, right? But I was not very knowledgeable.
She had your taser.
Yeah, I left my taser at the freaking shop. I was the shopkeeper and the security. And I realized, because I was like to her, there's some weird people coming around. Sometimes I'd be locking up and like men are doing funny things. And she was like, yeah, well, just stay in the shop for longer. And I was like, fuck this shit. I went onto one of these side roads, like on Strand Street, and I found like one of these cell phone repair shops, and I was like, do you have a taser or a pellet gun? Like, because you can buy the little guns that look like guns, but yeah. And then they were like, no, I've got a taser. This woman, I left my taser there because I was like, oh, I'm going to come back to work anyway. She fired me. I never had it in me to go back and get my taser because I cussed her out. But essentially, she fired me on the road. But that was a blessing, because 3 days after being fired, while I'm still in Grahamstown, I get an email saying that, can I come in for an interview to be the online assistant somewhere else in a magazine? And I was like, yes.
These things always end up having that sort of timing, though. I feel it's either coincidental.
But I felt like my life was over. It was like you and the air conditioners. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You went from the biggest magazines in the country. Now you're a shopkeeper?
Yeah.
Like, girl, might as well go back to my daddy. Like,
if it's the store I'm thinking about, I'm pretty sure I tore my pants once when I was on Kloof Street. And I went in there to buy a new pair of pants and I walked out with the pants on. And I'm like, can I wear them out of here? And the lady's like, then you can't return them. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to just keep them, but I have torn pants, and it was like one of those, those real gooch tears. But yeah, I mean, just like looping back.
Back to inspiring creativity.
I think for me, what I do appreciate about university is that it taught me to think in a very different way to what a lot of my colleagues are working in. And, whether that's because you got a degree or because you don't have a degree, what I learned there is that diversity in people's backgrounds, and this is something I think Platoon, interestingly, focus on a lot in hiring, makes your team stronger.
It really does. I think diversity really truly means variety of lived experience in order to be able to communicate and understand as many people as possible.
100%.
Because if you can do that, you can do anything.
And it makes your product better if you understand more people that you're trying to sell it to, right? So we'll get into that, but we've spent the last 2 months together. You had a bit of a break in Morocco recently. I was very jealous. But before that, we were on the road in Joburg together, and we did a whirlwind of panel conversations here with Spotify as part of their mom takeover of the mother city. And we sort of weren't ready to launch this podcast. We had the idea and then we were thrown in the deep end.
No, we weren't. But Spotify mom said, I'm your mother.
Yes. And they told us what to do.
Yeah, they held our hand through it. So, love them forever. But
that's also like, I found a lot of the things I've done in life someone sort of had to light a fire beneath me to make me do it because I have the plan.
It's like me agreeing to do the podcast with you. And then the planning phase came and I was just like, can't I just back out now? And then the fire was lit. It was like, oh shit, we're going.
Yeah. And it was like, all these things were stalling, and then suddenly we were just in it, and we had to run with it, which is why we're recording the introductory episode after we've done all these other things. But we've spoken to incredible people over the last 2 months, including, Grammy award-winning songwriter and artist Manana.
That one was I learned so much that day.
So I'm very excited for that episode to come out. But then we've hosted some live panels, which has been awesome because having an audience there and that engagement with the audience.
It's so cool. It was nerve-wracking, but it's so cool.
Yeah, in front of the camera now all the time and in front of the audience.
Now it's fine, right? Because I know all the people in the room. When it's us and then there are like 100 people over there, I wanted to have a stroke or something the day before to be like, I'm no longer medically able to fulfill these obligations.
From my days of being on stage, I always found the worst was having friends in the audience. Because
Friends is actually the
you.
best because now I've enjoyed the panels because there has been at least one of my really close friends in there, and at some point they position themselves very well. So at some point it looks like I'm looking at all of y'all, but no, I'm looking at Carissa over there.
I'm talking to her. Amazing. Yeah. I found it more nerve-wracking because I'm like, this person knows me and now they're seeing me do this thing. Whereas with randoms, it's like, I'm probably never going to see you again. When I was younger,
it felt that way to be on stage and people know, and it's like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
But now it's just like, hold my hand.
I'm just self-conscious about that stuff. It's funny because I'm not self-conscious.
Wait until you open your mouth on the internet one day.
Well, I've done that.
And you yap a little too much.
I've done that. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you can never hide again.
The comments, yeah. No, the comment section's brutal.
It's a lot.
But anyway, people will be hearing these conversations in the coming weeks because we'll be rolling them out. We don't know how often yet, but we're going to figure that stuff out. Don't worry.
Welcome to the test run of everything.
And and that's exactly it. We're hoping to improve them. We've learned a lot over these, and we're hoping that the quality of every podcast gets better. But I think what's so interesting to me is sort of hearing artists get asked questions they clearly don't get asked very often.
I know. It's taken them by surprise. Like, what do you mean? And it's like, I really would like to know what you meant by that. Yeah, and going really deep. And it's like, oh, you want to talk about engineering and songwriting? And it's like, yes.
That's exactly what I want to speak about, the details.
And it's beautiful.
And I guess my next question to you is, what do you want to achieve from these conversations? Because for me, as Quiet Life and what we're trying to achieve as a business is to create the infrastructure for artist development. And part of that is storytelling, narrative building, and process, sharing information. So those are like the things that are driving my side of this. And for you, there's obviously those things, but then additional
things. I wanna learn. I've been such a learn in the real world person. I used to achieve so well academically in school, and then once I was in the final stages of a formal education structure, I just couldn't do it. And everything I've learned has been through short courses or people or conversations. And there's so much knowledge I have, but I think personal experiences knowledge is so much more valuable. So it comes from a deeply selfish place, but I know because that selfishness will in turn help someone else get to learn something. And also I think it's important conversations to have, I find it so disheartening that someone will release an album and they're being asked, oh, what was the journey of making this? Like, what's your favorite song? How was collaborating with so-and-so? Like, I want to know, were you depressed? Did you go to therapy? You did that little guitar riff. Did that come to you? Like, I look at, now that we live in social media, it angers me, the media landscape in South Africa, and even like some podcasts and some shows, because I can log onto Twitter and Charlie Pugh is like, this is how I made this song. A glass fell and shattered in my kitchen while I was recording something. And then I took that glass shattering and and then next thing he's made this sick, incredible indie rock beat. And then you get like your Benny Blancos and many other people. I hate Benny Blanco. Oh, he's so annoying. Sometimes your heroes should never be in front of a camera or a mic, but he's incredibly talented, so I'll give him that. But the fact that artists made themselves so accessible to be able to share that creative process, I was like, my goodness, what's stopping journalists from asking them these questions and doing an exhibit A, B, and C and like getting to understand what is their knowledge? Because people just think that you're just born talented.
No.
And that stuff happens. So much learning goes along the way. So much financial investment, so much failure, so much drainage. Drainage?
Yeah.
I was on a roll there, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah.
Emotional drainage. Yeah.
I just feel like so many people put so much into a body of work and no one even scratches the surface, really. They just glide along it and move on.
Yeah, I had that in my days of playing music and making music, where you've really thought about this thing for months and months and months. And then someone's like, so where's the name?
Yeah, where does
what's
Diamond
the name
come
from? And it's like, can you not ask us a question we've answered 1,000 times and anyone can Google? Like, and it's a laziness or it's a lack of understanding.
It's also a lack of resources, So and it's gone even worse post-COVID when so much of our entertainment journalism was done with because so many platforms closed down because they couldn't afford to keep the workforce. And even after that, there was not an increase really. And whatever journalists are out there that were interested in entertainment are being forced to like cover 20 million other things that by the time it just comes to this little creative thing that's happened, it's like they don't have the strength beyond the basics. So I give them that as well.
Yes, and I suppose, a lot of those questions are just templates that they have and they change the name of the artist in it and send it out.
Sometimes they don't even interview them anymore. They just syndicate the press release and keep it moving.
That happens a lot. So you got to make sure there's no spelling mistakes in your press release. Otherwise they get published. They don't even check the spelling mistakes. So, but speaking about resources and, what people are able to do with what they have, you don't have a lot of time, but you still manage to do so much. And you're the mother of 2 beautiful little girls. Yes. That's correct. Oh. Yes. I have met them both.
I was just waiting for the next line, so I was just looking at you like...
so you're a mother of 2.
Yes.
How old are your daughters now?
They are 3 and 6.
So time intensive.
They're so tiny. They're so dependent. I mean, my 6-year-old is starting to she's a lot more independent. But for the larger part of, I would say, the most successful part of my career, like the boom.
It was the terrible 2s and the 3s and the 4s.
All of that. Like I started working at Apple a month after I gave birth to my second child. I was in meetings, camera off, breastfeeding. I would be in meetings and they're like, camera on. And I have like this baby that I'm putting to sleep. And just the demands of being a parent all happened in the time where finally everything I'd worked towards started to look like it made sense. Once I decided to be in the music industry, I don't have time. A lot of people are like, oh, you make it look so easy. It's like, when this looks good, something else is turning to shit at the back.
But may I just say that you're a mother of two and you're a good mother as well.
Thank you.
You don't outsource the work. You do a lot of it yourself.
I do a lot of it myself.
Help,
yeah, I do, from like 12 to 6 on weekdays because I need it for work hours. Yeah.
But still, you're raising your kids.
I'm there.
Yes. And you manage an incredible career that is multifaceted, and you maintain a healthy social life somehow, which I don't understand because that's the first part of my life that I just
my
throw
healthy
aside.
social life is going to support my friends' events, whether they're hosting them like you or whether they're a performing artist. That's the health.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get you. I try.
You get invited to a lot of events and you attend a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And, I would just be like, SARS can't make it. But
I do actually turn down quite a lot of things, I try use some of the things I'm invited to as an opportunity to catch up with my friends because we're too busy in our day-to-day lives. And if no one can go with me of like my 5 friends, and then I just don't go. I try to maintain a social life, but I also work in the kind of industry where I have to go to the jaw for market research, even the kinds of events I don't particularly enjoy.
Because social life's the first thing, as I said, that would gets chucked in my life. It's like, my friends are the first people I stop seeing. It's the number one thing. It's the low-hanging fruit. Like if I can achieve everything else in my life and then I see no one and go nowhere, I will take it because I can build my social life at home. I used to love going to the wine farms, cheese and wine, blah, 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 but that's 6 hours. I don't have 6 hours. Unless you've got 2,000 an hour to pay me to be at the wine farm, I can't go. And you can't be tired after a weekend.
Exactly. So I bring the wine farm to my little veranda.
There we go.
Put a little blanket and a cushion, cheese and wine, we're done.
There we go. Hey, make it a lot easier.
Yeah.
And in all of that, and I think, lockdown was interesting because it sort of shifted things. Before that, there was a big expectation of being in the office, which made it harder for mothers to maintain careers because now you have to choose, right? And it becomes a binary choice.
I look at mothers and how the world is not built for mothers and how mothers have to show up in the workplace as if they don't have children. I got extremely lucky because when I used to work at Rocking the Daisies, I worked from home. So when I started working with the original founders, which was from 2015 until halfway through 2016, there was having to go to the office every day, but I was nobody's mama back then. And then when I became a mom at the end of 2017, I was working from home by that point. And in 2019 was the only year under the new Rocking the Daisies management where I had to go to the office every day. But that was because an entirely new team had been put together. So it was important that everyone works from the same space. Exactly. Yeah. 2020, still, we start working from the office, lockdown hits. Lockdown happens. Thank God for Stain Entertainment because they really did take care of us, to be honest. Like, we were the people that thought that, hey, we work in such a nice-to-have industry. It's a festival. It's clearly not going to happen for the next 2 years. But Stain Entertainment kept us. We didn't know that at the time. Yeah. But, they kept us on payroll. They didn't make us feel like we should be grateful that we're getting a salary. We were doing work during that time. We were constantly, evolving, building different models of what this festival could look like under a virus we didn't understand. But leaving that part of the conversation alone. 2021 comes around and then I start working at a new company. I don't tell them I'm pregnant during the interview process. I tell them after I get the job. And then they're like, oh, no. Don't work 5 days a week. Work 3 days a week. You're a new mom. You just had... Honestly, I got so lucky in that regard that I went from 3 days to 4 days. I'm in a full-time company that is so understanding of parenthood. In the old company I was at, parenthood could become an inconvenience, but not because they didn't care about parenthood, but because nobody in their company had become a parent who was doing what I was doing. So it was a lot of a learning experience. But I look at how my life could have been different if I had worked a regular 9-to-5 work, go to work. I don't know how these women do it. Also, childcare isn't from 9 to 5. Not all schools offer that level. There's no support for mothers, and it's devastating. I'd love to do something about it. I don't know what.
Yeah.
It's like all that yapping, no solutions.
Well, I mean,
but
the solution's bigger than one person.
It blows my mind that women are capable of doing all of that and still being able to show up like nothing happened. Like I have to now go to work after I got slapped in the face by a 3-year-old. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And motherhood is tough. It's tough. Like my kids have walked in on me crying because of how intense work has been. Because that's the other side. People think, oh, how can you do it all? It's like I was crying in the bathroom earlier and someone walked in and said, I'm bored. I need a snack.
And you're oh my God, take some of my work off my plate, right? But anyway, all of this happens, and I understand what you're saying, that it's so intense, but over and above that, you went and became a celebrity on TikTok for essentially...
It's the sacrifice of the social life. So you start yapping on the internet because you don't work, you work from home, you don't leave your house, you're always talking. And then one day you leave your house and you're like, oh shit, what have I done? Because you're not aware of it.
Yeah, 100%. And how did that start? What was the first video you put out that sort of went viral?
I had my baby on my back and I was complaining about the country's COVID funds being eaten by the then Minister of Health, Dr. Willem Kiezer, and a company called Digital Vibes. I just felt like just to even name that company Digital Vibes was an insult to our intelligence as a nation. And that's what started it all.
And then from then it's just been, video after video broaching politics, corruption issues.
With the aim of getting people to register to vote.
Yes,
once I got 28,000 people to register to vote, most people have not heard me talk about politics since the start of the year. People are like, oh, I miss the news content. I'm like, I'll see you in 4 years when we have to knock down the next guy. My purpose has been fulfilled. And also not to talk about all of that stuff brings so much negativity to you personally. And in the times that I don't do social commentary, it's honestly because I've had enough. And it does take a toll on your mental health. Doing all of that research on corruption, on rape, on death, on murders, on crime, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it becomes your entire persona. No.
And I think what people don't realize is you're doing all that research yourself.
Yes.
And with the podcast, I was like, should we get someone as a researcher to help you? And you're like, no.
No, we can't. Because I need to be the one researching. I need to, because there's so much I absorb just
through the process.
Through looking for something. Yeah. That I'm just the more I absorb about you, the more I will kind of know.
Well, just more to put on your plate, I guess. But totally worth it, I think.
It's toxic here.
What first drew you into media and culture and into the world of, what made you say, I want to do journalism at that age or be involved in media and culture?
I wanted to talk to the stars. I always felt I would always become a star in a weird way, in that kind of you're 10 years old and every time you brush your hair in the mirror, you're on your own TV show.
Yeah, I had the tennis racket on the tennis court sideways.
And then when I realized that I'm from these tiny towns in the middle of nowhere that are so far from the nearest city, I developed an interest in people who are stars and how they become stars. And I was like, I want to talk to them. I want to find out what drives them. I want to get to know them. I want to touch you. Yeah.
So you wanted to get into that world.
I wanted to get into that world, but I don't want to be in front and center. I don't want to be the girl sitting here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now you are. But anyway.
In the meantime.
But you've earned the seat, I think. And then you went to Condé Nast. Then from there, you worked across multiple of their magazines.
Yes.
But in a time, print media was sort of dying out.
It was at its peak back then.
Was it? Was it selling?
It was circa 2012 to 2015. The magazine wave was high. Okay. People were buying those papers. People actually cared about who the journalist was. It was a big time. People magazine still had the centerfold posters.
There we go.
They were thriving.
Yeah.
But when I joined GQ, it was when online media was growing. Yeah.
And I mean, it's such a shame because I think there's something so special about a printed, thought out publication compared to just another piece thrown online to get more clicks,
Yeah.
And media changed and you found yourself I think you started social media managing for Rocking the Daisies. Is that right?
So I started as a PR coordinator at Rocking the Daisies, and I quit journalism because my editor at the previous publication had also just pissed me off so much. I always thought I would quit just because of like the money alone, but it was this bitch drove me over the edge, and I was like, I would never write anything ever again. And I saw a social media post. They were looking for a PR coordinator, did not know what a PR coordinator is, shot my shot anyway with my CV and everything. And after a few interviews, they hired me. And that truly is what changed the course of my life, because for so long, while I was up and down, journalism, other side gigs, waitressing, bartending, I never knew what my purpose in this world was. Especially back to what we spoke about earlier about how like I always thought I wanted to be this journalist, and then when I got there and realized it's not what I want, I was like, oh shit, where's that degree at?
Yeah.
It could help me. So that changed the course of everything, because I was thrown into the depths of the live music industry in like the heart of it in South Africa.
Had you been involved in music before?
No.
Never.
I couldn't even do re mi fa sa la. I went to Seed Experiences, and back then, you know, they were the founders of Rocking the Daisies. They had a sister festival called Sowing the Seeds. They did standalone concerts like all the time. I went from being this person who was interviewing people as a features journalist from time to time to going on tour and with George Ezra, doing crazy things with Ben Howard, of Monsters and Men, like Jungle. Like Jungle had a hit song, and I was like, oh my God, that guy totally hit on me the whole tour. Like crazy things like that. Like it just changed. I just knew that's where I was born to be, you know, and it took being in the crowd while Rudimental was on stage in 2014, shoving Hennessy down our throats for me to be like, I want to work here. I shit you not, that was the moment I was just like, I'm going to try by hell and high water to work at this company. But life on the other side was nothing like Hennessy being shoved down your throat by rock stars.
It's never like that, is it?
It was never like that. But it opened up my world to so many things. It reignited this hunger to want to learn something, to like do short courses, to like empower myself. So from there, funny enough, I was the PR coordinator for like a month. And then the actual PR lady went on maternity leave and never came back. So like within a month, I was like promoted. And then a few months later, I was like doing the social media, even though I kind of was helping with the social media since I got there. And from there, it was just like one step at a time until I became the head of marketing, PR, and social media, where I also happened to be the only employee under all three of those roles. But it was incredible. Like I went from working at this white festival, cocaine white, to working at what became and is the most diverse 4-day multifaceted festival in the country. It was a crazy ride.
Not only
crazy
that,
ride.
but during your time, it became the biggest festival. I do know that since then they've scaled it back a little bit, but there was one stage, what was it, 30,000 people?
It went from like 30,000 to half the amount after Stain Entertainment took over, because it was a safety hazard.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't anything about the festival struggling, blah, blah, blah. It needed to be honed down, you know,
Controlled
like
a bit,
it needed to be controlled. Like it needed to be made safe. First and foremost, you always think you're safe until you're not.
I think what I really appreciate the work that you did there most was, you know, through the time then partnering with people like Ange and She Said So, or I'm not sure if it was She Said So at the time that drove it, but you guys created these Daisy Lands and these
So it was a women's
spaces.
campsite, and it was birthed in 2019. I first suggested this festival in 2018, and it was like, girl, please, not now. You know, we're trying to take over this festival from old management. And then in 2019, I remember deciding I'm going to pitch this idea of a women-only campsite. By women, it's also anyone who identifies as a woman, one last time. And I sat down with George Avakia, and he was the festival director during that time. He was also the festival director during the time that the whole face of what the festival looked like changed completely to become so diverse. So it was like we butted heads like all the time, but I don't know what marketing person and their leader would not butt heads in order to reach common goals. And you know when you pitch something absolutely absurd to someone and they're looking at you, but like they're looking at you through the corner of their eyes and they're just like, and you can see the look in their eyes is just like, it's
That's
just like money.
Happen.
It's just like, this is so much money. And he was just like, if you believe in this, I believe in it. And I was like, what? Amazing. And he was like, yeah, if it fails, it's on you. And I was like, what? Like, what do you even mean? And we tested out this campsite. The first year that it was done, like, I was helping to cut out the name of the campsite on site just like 2 days before. Lee, who used to be like one of our site managers, she was like heading it up and putting it together for me. We scrambled all we could. I got a last minute partnership with like Cosmopolitan magazine, and they brought in like some skincare people and magazines, and we tried to make it like as pretty as possible, and we hosted panel discussions. I was really reaching that year. Like, you don't start a campsite from scratch and then try to have its own production in there where you're trying to also get the artist from stage to back there to talk to you, to talk to fans, to integrate with people, but somehow it worked. And that was obviously the last daisies where I worked there full time in 2019. And I remember being so nervous about what will happen to this campsite, because this campsite was a huge cost. You know, it was not always denied to me when I pitched it because they didn't believe in it. Like, I got that concept from Bonnaroo in the US because they'd always had like a similar space to that. It's because of how much it costs to build that campsite that it does not matter how many people you put in that campsite, you are losing big dollar. So to see that
festivals don't make money,
so to have like Stain Entertainment invest in it and then continue to do so long term was incredible to see. And then to bring on the following time that it happened, She Said So, that transformed it like completely, you know, because they've got the cultural work and the background and the knowledge about how to make it a safe space. I am no cultural worker, you know, and I had no experience in any of that. I spoke to a lot of NGOs in the lead up to that campsite opening for the first time to learn things like, how will you know if someone is truly woman identifying or trying to be a creep? But, you know, that entire festival was birthed out of an incident happening to my friend in 2016, and that incident being inflicted by a man in the middle of the beach bar, which used to be full of beach boots back then. It was just like sleeveless vests, nipples out, those
Steroids,
kinds, that type. And after this happened to her, there was no space we could go where there was no man.
And then
I knew from that year I had to just keep fighting for it every single year. And it took 3 years until it finally became a thing.
Well, it's amazing that you did that, and it still exists at Daisy.
Which is so
ongoing.
Cool. It does,
It's nice when the company doesn't undo things you do when you leave, right?
But I also think they understood it as such an important thing. You look at the climate for women and gender-based violence and anything in South Africa, it's an important space. People, you are not in control of who you sell tickets to, you know, but the least you can do is create a space in which if anyone, whether they stay in that campsite or not, and they're a woman and they feel like they need to be safe, they know they have somewhere to be safe at.
100%. And I think, you know, it's so nice to have a company keep things in place when you leave that really matter to you, because
it really does, because it's something I look back on with like such a sense of pride. I started something, but along the way there've been so many women who made that idea even better, and it's beautiful because it means that they didn't just do it to make you happy or because you were a long-time employee. They saw that you really believed in something. Then they saw firsthand how big of a difference it makes for people. And then they also saw the value that it brings to the business.
Yeah. And it does bring a lot of value to the business.
Think so.
I think so too.
Sentiment is the highest form of currency any company can have.
I agree.
And to have a pocket of positive female sentiment, and also in a realm that doesn't exist at any festival in the country, big win.
Yeah, and you know, the music industry is traditionally male dominated. To a large degree, probably more so than society in general. And my experience of the music industry, at least, has been quite different to that. I was in a band with a female manager and lead singer. I then went on to work at Platoon, where I was the only man in a team of 7, where the rest were all women. And, you know, for me, that was quite amazing because it was a blessing, because I learned how to behave better within the music industry. Because when you're around men, you get away with a lot more.
Exactly.
Like, you can say things that, like...
It was like that when I joined the festival industry, you know? Like, the men were really shitty back then. And if you assert yourself as a woman, people's behaviors change. They learn that what's acceptable around the boys is not. Like, that joke is not that funny, actually.
And it's not that funny anyway when you're around the boys. The boys just make you feel like it is, because it's like, yes, you know?
I think the more spaces to make music become accessible to women, and for women to know how many women exist, the more will be gravitated. So you look at a stat like that and you all think, oh shit, it must be the same in the background. I was shocked to move from the live entertainment industry to the recording side and to realize so many of these executives are women, you know? And I was in a pocket of the music industry where it felt like there are no women, there are no black women. And then you move to a different dimension where it's like, oh my gosh, all the bad bitches are here and they're killing it and they're holding big roles and they're uplifting other women.
But I do think we were in a little pocket within Apple and you know, their hiring policy and what they're trying to do.
Have you seen the Billboard 40 under 40 women's list? It is full of vice presidents of almost every single big label in the world. Somewhere is a woman, like standing next to a man, whether that man likes it or not.
You know, I think young boys are encouraged to play on their computers, whether it's video games or whatnot, and you're starting to see women start doing that as well, and young girls. But actually in lockdown, Fender did release a stat saying that they're selling more guitars than ever before, and it's mainly women buying the guitars, or young girls and women playing guitars. So that started changing now.
Yeah, your environment is everything. You know, growing up, I had an uncle that played the electric guitar and the saxophone, and he was and still is really incredible at those two things. But those weren't accessible to me. The only time I would be around something like that was like once a year when we go visit him. And a part of me that wanted to do music, like pursued piano for a few years. But the moment that wasn't in my proximity, it didn't feel like something I could. I look at my daughter now, she's growing up in a house where like her mom is a marketing strategist in the music industry. Her dad is a sound engineer and manages people like DJ Lag and Bongezi. She's gets exposed to keyboards. Her pitch is incredible without even any training. She can believe that music is possible. But what's crazy is that you put one of her friends from school next to her and they wouldn't even know that this is a thing that's possible. So I think the exposure to it happens so much more easily for boys than girls. And,
you know, I just think, wow, what a whirlwind of a conversation. We've touched on almost everything.
I know, right? Except trauma. What is your team's trauma?
Let's not go into my traumas. I don't deal with them. I leave that for other people to deal with the outpourings of them.
This is my therapy.
Yes, that's what it will be, hopefully, for many people as we move forward. But let's bring this to a close, because I think we're starting to get into the time where we're both going to expose ourselves.
I think we're going to have like the edited version of this episode and then the extended
version, all their bullshit. But yeah, I mean, just to wrap up nicely, you know, I love talking to you anytime we talk. We don't do it enough because we're both so busy in our lives, and
we have to schedule this.
We have to schedule our friendships and interview each other and make it productive to make it worth it. Financially viable friend coffees, you know.
Yes.
The coffee has to pay for itself. That's the rule.
I like that.
Yeah. But before we go, and before the audience gets a lot more of you and a lot less of me, which I'm sure they're all hoping for, what do you want to leave them with?
Because you're such a cutie. They're going to want more.
I prefer being modest.
You'll make like every 10 episodes cameo.
Okay, I'll do that.
For like a second.
If you want a friend,
bring a coffee on screen.
There we go. I already interrupt the Q&A.
Sorry, we're literally trying to finish the episode, but we keep yapping.
That's cool. That's what we do, and that's what people are going to have to get used to if it's an episode with the two of us. Yeah. But I guess at this point, I hand this series over to you, my
Yeah.
little baby from my company that I'm giving to you to just run with.
You know, one thing I've learned from this partnership is that I would never give my company name to someone else. I'm joking. Unless it's me. Look at his eyes.
Yeah, that's going to be used in court. If,
In court. Not the
if we ever
evidence,
need
Your
it,
Honor.
please archive this in a special folder.
This was AI generated, Your Honor. But I'm so excited about this entire podcast, the people that we're going to talk to, the conversations that we're going to get into. I'm trying to smoke a blunt with someone. If you can guess who it is, I'm trying to get that man on this podcast.
I'm guessing that the T-shirt you're wearing has something to do with him.
It has a lot to do with that. I hope the signals and the manifestations are going. But there are so many incredibly talented musicians, songwriters, engineers, managers. We are having a manager crisis in South Africa, but that's a story for another day. But there's so many people who are part of this industry, who uphold this industry, who are trying to teach people how to be a part of this industry and create a generation of people that respect this industry and how everything works. And just the craft and the talent, man. People are so talented. You know, people don't just wake up one day and make a hit song. Some people sit with the song for a decade and release it years later, or they're about to release it years later, but the sound is outdated and it becomes some big DJ's remix. Like, it's just crazy how one idea becomes something that changes your life. And I can't wait to speak to people about.
Well, I hope this becomes something like that for both of us.
Yeah, this is my get rich quick scheme.
Get us a TV show.
How many streams do we need for the coffee to pay for itself?
I don't know, like 1 billion.
1 billion. Oh. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Quiet Conversations.